LSI 2021 at the beautiful Ritz-Carlton Laguna Niguel. It's nearly true tales of innovation. I'm your host, Benjamin Glenn. Good morning. I am here with Lloyd Diamond. Lloyd, what's the current company that you're working with?
Pixium Vision. We are a publicly traded company on Euronext in Paris. We have about 33 employees, actually, most of which work in Europe, although I have one employee here in the US that's responsible for running our clinical work in the US. Maybe just a word about the technology itself. So we have developed, in conjunction with Stanford University, a retinal implant. So we like to call it sort of a bionic implant, which is the buzzword, where we actually surgically insert the implant into the subretinal space to restore vision in patients that have lost central vision because of the dry form of age-related macular degeneration.
So how far along is the company now? I mean, this seems to me, Lloyd, I've got to be perfectly honest with you. I've been teasing Scott Pentel about doing this event, and I've been calling him a daredevil. He's been thinking a lot about Evel Knievel. But if I think about that period of time, you're making me think about Stephen F. Austin, the $6 million man, bionic eyes. Come on now, Lloyd. This seems to me like autonomous cars and self-driving. Really, these people are going to get vision back?
Yeah, I mean, it's reality, and we've published data in the Journal of Ophthalmology last year.
That's fantastic.
We not only do we restore vision, but we give them the ability to read letters and sequence of letters. We have, just to put it sort of in perspective, all of our patients that we implant are considered legally blind. In the dry form of age-related macular degeneration, what's a bit frustrating for these patients is they're mostly older, so onset is usually around 60 years old. It's very common, and a certain percentage, about 5 to 7% of those patients, will progress to where they'll lose central visual acuity. So they keep peripheral vision, so they can kind of, like, they'll look out the corner of their eye, they can kind of navigate around a room, but they can't read or see faces. Central vision is what's responsible for detailed vision. And in our patients, they've all lost central visual acuity, they're considered legally blind. And after 24 months in our publication, we showed that all of them are actually able to read letters on a letter chart, like when you go to the ophthalmologist, and they have on average 5 lines of improvement. The best performer is able to read up to a size 8 font. So, I mean, I can't even read a size 8 font without my glasses.
So, Lloyd, with Pixium Vision, what are some of the key benefits to your patients, and what have you seen? You told us a lot about your initial clinical results. So what's the benefit for the patients?
Yeah, so I think originally the disease was somewhat underestimated or underappreciated. If you look at the AMD overall, age-related macular degeneration represents about 200 million people worldwide, of which 80% or so have the dry form. So about 160 million people, and there's no therapy for them today. A lot of research going on, but no therapy. What we know is there was, the reason I say it was originally sort of underappreciated, at least the extent of the impact of the disease, was it wasn't until back in mid to late 2000s, there was a publication that demonstrated that patients that had the advanced form of the disease, which is the disease that Pixium actually targets, where they become legally blind, it has a similar impact on quality of life as somebody that's had a severe stroke or is undergoing dialysis.
Wow.
So these patients, they're older, they lose complete independence. You're independent your whole life. Now, at the end of your life, you can't see, you become completely dependent on people. Quality of life goes down, early death. And it's not a nice journey for the sunset years of these patients. So we take that sort of mission very, very seriously. Our hope is to give them back some level of independence. If they have some restoration of visual acuity in their central vision, some detailed vision. So things like being able to read a medication label. I mean, you can't read the medication label and you have nobody around. You take several medications. Imagine what happens if you don't take the right one or the right dose. Being in the kitchen, being able to cook. We have people in our clinical study that said they just want to be able to turn on the stove and know what temperature they're at so that they can cook again. Those things are meaningful for them. But I think most importantly, what most of the patients that we talk to would like to be able to achieve, they all say we'd like to be able to see once again our grandchildren's faces, the expressions on their faces, or our pets, things that are dear to them. And that's what we really want to, give back to them. They contribute to society their whole lives, and then they come to the end of their, last 10 or 15 years, and they spend it in complete darkness. So we take that mission extremely seriously at Pixium.
Lloyd, as you're talking about what the patients are looking as their vision is restored, it makes me think of you've been in orthopedics, you were a Kaifan guy. You think about it in orthopedics, the surgeons, their preclinical work is always activities of daily living. So when we get done with your shoulder, when we get done with your hip, your knee, what do you want to get back to? At Hospital for Special Surgery, back in the game, right? So it's almost like you guys are this is the activities of daily living for the people that have got, AMD, and getting them back in the game, getting them back. And it's very interesting how, and even I think just to draw the parallel to orthopedics, that it depends on the patient. But most of them, they just have their daily life. They want to get back to it.
And I'm glad you brought up the orthopedic the orthopedic example, because we've often been criticized since we are intervening in the later stage of people's diseases. Payers and others may criticize us and say, well, why would you take the time and the expense to provide an implant to a 75-year-old patient? And my answer always to them was, when I started my career back in Zimmer, back in the day, you wouldn't put a hip or knee in somebody over 60. Today, you routinely put hips and knees in people over the age of 80. Age is a mental and physical state. It doesn't mean anything. The number in and of itself is irrelevant. And, a 75-year-old who has otherwise good health and can continue to contribute, why would you not give them back their vision?
That's right.
But yes, so it, that's why I kind of hesitate when I say sort of bionic. People think Star Trek or science fiction, but it's a reality. I mean, this is a reality for our patients.
Wow, that sounds like incredible progress. Incredible progress. So what's next for the company clinically? Like continued on to follow initial patients, or you're going into a new phase? Where are you now?
Yeah, so we're actually in our final phase in Europe, our pivotal phase. So I guess in the pharma world, they would call it a phase 3. In med device, we call it a pivotal study. And we are doing that in several countries in Europe. At the end of the study period, which will be 3 years, although after 12 months of follow-up, we'll have enough data to be able to file for a CE mark approval, at which point, end of 2023, sometime in early 2024, we would be the first retinal device to have an on-label approval for dry AMD.
Wow, we'll have to keep an eye out for those milestones.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Well, and also we were talking before about the place where your company operates. It sounds like it's a very interesting, I won't try to say it in French, you can, but the innovation corridor where your company operates, can you tell us more about that?
Sure, so it's called, in French, and then I can translate it in English, it's called Passage d'innovation, so it means innovation passage. It is a large building, actually, which regroups about 10 or so companies in various phases of development, all in life science, so some Medtech, some biotech, with varying degrees of similarity. And the reason that I say it's quite unique is that it's not only sort of an incubator, but it also provides shared resources for sort of back office support for all the companies. So for instance, human resources or support in IP development and filings, sort of legal patent support, things that I would sort of consider G&A related.
Yep.
They actually provide, or I would say sublease those services in a shared fashion to all of the different companies that are a part of the Passage. And I'd say it's quite unique, in France. I would say in the U.S. and Silicon Valley and Boston and places like that, Southern California also, it's more common to sort of have those incubator-like scenarios. But in Europe, not so. Maybe a bit more, but not so. So we're quite unique in Paris.
In the Passage, is there involvement from any of the sovereign funds or involvement from the French government? Do they provide financial assistance or any other kind of aid to it?
So no, not directly into Passage, although maybe I'll speak more broadly about the French sort of life science, health tech environment. So there are incentives, I will say, and maybe there are two or three that I'll mention. France has been actually quite cutting edge with respect to fiscal policies around investing in companies that are in life science development, for instance. They have certain stock portfolio funds that individual retail investors can invest through, that if they are in companies that are in the life science sector, such as we qualify for that at Pixium, they get certain tax breaks when they actually sell the stocks and they remain within the portfolio. That's one aspect. The other is there is what's called the research tax credit, which the French government provides to life science, mostly life science companies. There are some others that fall outside of the life science area, but specific to life science companies where if you can prove that certain expenses are actually targeting research, you get euro for euro back in tax in the form of a payment, the expenses you make. So, I mean, it can represent 2, 3, 4 million euro a year for companies in funding.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so they've been quite proactive. Maybe the last point I'd mention is, for instance, if you hire PhD students that have not yet entered the workforce and you hire them right out of their PhD thesis into the life science space, the government will actually fund their salary for up to 18 months.
Lloyd Diamond.